improved my skills a lot in that lockdown because it forced me to just stick to one area and just keep building up on that and keep improving.
Hello, you're listening to Chasing Light, or you're watching Chasing Light. Either way, this is the collective by creators for creators. And today's episode, I am joined by the wonderful Jonas Wilson, all the way from Australia.
Good to be here.
How does it feel to be talking to someone all the way from the UK?
Oh, it feels great. It's awesome. I mean, I'm glad we worked around the time difference and managed to get this.
Of course. It's
Yeah,
for those
awesome.
watching at home, it's currently 9:30 over here in the UK, and it's 8:30, nearly 9 o'clock over in Australia.
Yeah.
But you're like a whole day ahead of us. So Jonas, how long have you been using a camera for? What was the first camera you picked up? Like, talk to me about that.
So, I've been using a camera since I was about 16, which was 5 years ago now.
Yep.
And I remember initially just seeing videos online of a specific Nikon camera, which I think was the P900, and it had like a crazy zoom. And I remember just seeing that and thinking, damn, I really want to be able to do that sort of thing just with a camera. Because up until then, obviously, I just had like phones and iPods and everything.
Yeah, no,
So
of
that
course.
was the first sort of proper camera I got, I'd say. But I didn't really understand things like raw photos or editing or anything until about 2 years ago, I'd say.
That's very interesting. You still have your original camera or not?
I do, yeah. It's right here on my desk, actually.
No way. I've got mine right here on my desk as well. My first camera was a Sanyo Zakti. It's a little thing. Looks like a little pistol. Incredible.
Oh, classic.
Over there. So yeah.
I love that. I love that.
So,
mine one's a bit clunky looking now, but this was basically it.
Wow, look at that. It's got a built-in lens as well.
Yeah, it does. It does. But obviously it doesn't shoot RAWs or anything, and not being able to change lenses was always a bit of a limitation. So then when I eventually saved up more to buy like an entry-level DSLR, that was a huge step for me.
So how old are we talking then? Are you at 16 at this point, or are you a little bit older?
Yeah, so when I got my first like proper camera, I'll say
proper camera. Yeah, no, I like that. Yeah,
quote unquote proper. I mean, it's nothing now, but I was probably about 18 actually. I think I just finished school, so I turned 18 right as I finished year 12, and that was
you're only 21 now, right?
Yeah.
So you're telling me the photos that we see on your portfolio are only 3 years of proper training with a DSLR?
Yeah, I'd probably say even 2, because for the first sort of 9 months of having the camera, I remember all I did was film very low budget YouTube videos by myself.
Yeah, we've all been there.
That was sort of the initial purpose, but yeah.
So sort of like currently Australia are on top of, well, you've kind of conquered coronavirus in some sense compared to the rest of the world. So what's it like over there? Is it pretty easy to go out there and take photos at the moment, or is there still quite a lot of limitations to your creativity and things like that?
Yeah, well, thankfully, I mean, like you said, we've pretty much got on top of it as far as as much as you possibly can at this stage, I think. And I'm very grateful to be able to actually go out and shoot photos again properly, at least locally here. Obviously, we've had, Australia has the advantage of being the island that's very nicely cut off from everything else. So we have a nice strict quarantine system, but we've had a few, I'll call them leaks in that system in the last few weeks, which meant that state borders get closed like that, and then suddenly you can't travel to Sydney or you can't travel to Brisbane or anything. So I've pretty much just been set on staying in Victoria, in Melbourne, where I'm from, and just staying local for now. And
so Melbourne obviously is local to you. So is Melbourne sort of your go-to at the moment in terms of if you're going to go out there and shoot, or do you kind of go a bit more rural?
Yeah, I mean, it's been great to go back into Melbourne again, to the city, because for the longest time, I think 6 months, I wasn't allowed to go into the city at all because we had a strict 5-kilometer travel limit, and I was stuck within 5 kilometers of my house, which is actually where a lot of the photos that I sent you were taken, because obviously the limit.
Let's talk about that. So obviously, I mean, depending on where you are in the world and what's within 5 kilometers of you can change massively. I know within 5 kilometers of me, luckily I live by the sea, so I've got the sea and cliffs and things like that. But you have got some really quite incredible landscapes. I mean, as a Brit, I called it a jungle, but I believe it's a forest in Australia. I know we call them forests as well, but it looks like something out of like Avatar, like what you sent me. So yeah, talk to me about that. That's only 5 kilometers away from you, if that.
Yeah, so I live in an area called the Dandenong Ranges, which is about an hour east of Melbourne, actually. And it's one of the only temperate rainforests in the state, which has just like massive old gum trees and ferns and stuff. And I like to think it looks like sort of Jurassic Park.
Yes,
Uh,
that's exactly what I thought. Like I can imagine like a
the,
T-Rex, walking around in there.
I
So,
mean, it's been great just for me because obviously during peak lockdown, not being able to leave
mhm.
the 5 kilometer radius was
Yeah.
very limiting to some of my friends who sort of don't live near any, I'll say, photography locations. But
Mhm.
for me, I mean, I was able to work around that and just use the area here, I guess. And really, I'd say I improved my skills a lot in that lockdown because it forced me to just stick to one area and just keep building up on that and keep improving on that rather than relying heavily on the next amazing location.
It's so funny you've said that. That was actually what my next question was. Do you think like the lockdowns and sort of being limited to like certain positions in your country has affected creativity, or has it enhanced it to some level?
It's hard to say. I mean, to some extent, it's obviously limited me because previously I was so used to being able to travel freely, not
Of
just
course.
within Australia, but also internationally. But
Yeah.
then suddenly being stuck in this tiny little bubble, you just sort of think, well, I'm going to have to make do somehow, and I'm going to have to just try and make this small area look as amazing as I can. So
Which
that was where I really
I
pushed myself to just make my local town here look impressive and like something that is a bit more unique than what I had originally thought.
And I think fair play to you, mate, because for the guys who haven't ever heard of you before, Jonas's work is simply incredible. Like some of the, I'd had no idea that some of those shots were as local as you said they were. You know, somewhere in the UK, sometimes we have to travel miles and miles to find stuff like that. Certainly haven't got any rainforests in this country,
Yeah.
but it, the fact that I had no idea that Australia were putting like the 5 kilometer limits on. So we've had travel restrictions and we thought they were tight. Like, we, we had a thing where you can only go for an hour of exercise at one point.
Mm.
Very similar in the fact that, you weren't supposed to travel very far at all and you're still not supposed to travel very far, but we've never had to a limit sort of as strict as that. So that's very
Yeah.
interesting. You mentioned briefly about how sort of not just locally, but you always used to travel internationally as well. And one of the shots in the book is from, I believe, San Francisco.
Yeah, that's correct. So,
Talk to me about
I was
that.
actually,
How old are we? What year is this? Where? Like,
yeah, I mean,
all about it
I
because
was,
that shot is incredible. Again, the cloud inversion over the bridge. I don't know how long, or did you have to predict that happening? Was it luck of the draw?
I mean, luckily in San Francisco, the fog comes in basically at the same time every afternoon. So it's just a matter
No
of
way, really? So you
getting
just
there and waiting for it, and then off you go. You've got amazing photo opportunities every single afternoon. So I love that. But I was very fortunate to be able to go to America very early last year. So I left in mid-January and came back early February in 2020. So I'll say I sort of just made it before Australia closed their in and out border. So
just got
yeah,
back. Yeah, wow.
basically, I mean, I remember as we were coming back, that was when COVID sort of started becoming a bit more, I guess, global and not just,
Yeah.
centered around China. So that was when we initially started hearing about outbreaks in Italy and the UK
Yep.
and America as well. And we
So
sort of came back.
when did Australia make the decision to like just lock itself off?
From memory, it was very early March, I believe,
Mhm.
pretty much exactly now a year ago. So 10th of
Wow.
March was probably about the same time that it closed everything down. So,
And looking back on, you've said it's been almost a year now since
mm,
for the majority of us, but especially for you guys, as you haven't been able to leave your country for a year now, and
yeah.
we fortunately haven't been put in that position um, in the UK. But you guys, you haven't been out of your country for a year and potentially for not for a while either. Is that right?
That's, I mean, it's definitely looking that way. I think international travel is probably completely off the table now for 2021 as well.
Wow.
Um, Given that our government seems to be relying quite heavily on Australians getting vaccinated as well as other countries getting vaccinated, because I guess being an isolated island is sort of a double-edged sword that we have the advantage of being able to eliminate this thing very well and then sort of keeping it that way. But in order to keep it that way, it sort of means we have to lock ourselves off completely from everyone else, which, like I said,
Have you
is a good
found that?
thing.
Have
Yeah.
you found that perhaps being locked off from other people has affected you sort of mentally at all, or do
Oh,
you?
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. 100%. I mean, as you may know as a photographer as well, I mean, it's one thing to go out and shoot photos on your own, but it's a whole different thing when you're going out with groups or even just one other person. You sort of bounce ideas off each other and you get that much more creative. And I feel like that was one area that I really, really missed a lot all throughout last year. So that's been great now that I'm able to meet up with, I think, up to 100 people outdoors and stuff again now. So there's basically no limit. I mean, I'm not meeting up with 100 friends, obviously, but I can go out with big groups of friends again and shoot photos like we would have pre-COVID times. And nowadays in Melbourne, at least, other than wearing masks and washing hands and stuff like that, you wouldn't really be able to tell any difference between, I guess, normal pre-COVID times.
Really? Wow, that's incredible. But like 100 people outside, like at the moment, we can meet one other person. So it's a very, very different world you're living in right now. But like you said, it's when you shoot on your own, it can be like, it can almost be as isolating as being indoors, in the fact that, like, especially when you're so used to being out there with other people, and like you said, bouncing ideas off someone, to then just like, I think there's kind of, like you said, double-edged sword to like your island, and the fact that double-edged sword to this, in the idea that when you're out there and you're on your own, it can feel kind of quite suffocating. That's my own personal sort of experience. And like you said, like, if you can't bounce ideas off of someone, it can sort of neglect yourself a little bit, especially with the photos you end up taking. So how many of the photos from the book are sort of from the lockdown period?
I mean, obviously the ones from America were pre-lockdown, but I think from memory, all the ones in the forest areas
What
of
about that
myself.
shot in Melbourne, the long exposure in Melbourne?
Oh, that was very recently, actually. That
Oh,
was
really?
in January this year. Yeah.
So that's
So
sort of, you're allowed to go into the city now.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, interesting.
That was one of my favorite things as well. Coming back into the city and finally able to shoot something else again other than just landscapes. Obviously,
Yep.
I probably prefer shooting landscapes because it's just what I'm more comfortable with. But it was great to finally be able to go into the city and do something different for a change again.
Exactly, 100, like, mix it up a bit, as they say. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the final shot in the book that you sent me was from, is it from Yosemite?
Yosemite, yeah.
Oh my, Yosemite, that is a terrible pronunciation. That was
Don't
terrible.
worry, don't worry. My pronunciation was
Yosemite.
even worse
Oh my
before I got
word, that is
there.
incredible. Yes, talk to me about that. This is obviously pre-COVID as well, and
Yeah, it is.
in the same trip as the San Francisco trip?
Yeah, it was. So that was actually while we were staying in San Francisco, we caught a bus in the morning because obviously I was 20 at the time. I couldn't rent a car or anything.
No.
We caught a bus at 4 in the morning, I believe, and it took 5 hours to get there. And then we had 3 hours in the park just to then catch the bus 5 hours back to San Francisco again.
Oh, what a day. So
yeah, it was intense.
3 hours, and that was it. And that's the shot you
3
managed.
hours, 10 hours on the bus. Yeah.
Wow. So,
but even so, I'd say it was probably definitely top 3 like photography experiences I've ever had, because the scale of the place and just having anticipated it for so long made it that much more exciting, I guess, because the whole time on the bus trip and for months in advance while I like booked the trip, I was just thinking, I have to get there. I have to get there. It's going to be so worth it. And then when you finally get there, you just think, yes, it's definitely worth it. Like,
and that's like, those are those feelings that I think we all miss right now.
Yeah, definitely.
With the restrictions. It's like when you can visualize that perfect picture and then it happens in front of you. There's not really a better feeling than that, is there?
Definitely not. No. It's incredible to finally see like the idea that you've sort of had in your head for weeks and months in advance, and to just get there and finally be able to execute that. And
so like, you'd already planned that shot when you were in Australia before you really?
Yeah.
Wow,
For
that's
the longest time.
and I think, if something that I wanted from this book, this sort of project, for people who are reading it or joining in online, is I want people to be inspired to to pick up a camera for the first time. And a lot of people think that you kind of just point and shoot and these pictures take themselves. But
Oh, I
nobody
wish.
knows the stories that go in behind it. Like you're saying, like you caught a bus at 4 a.m. for 5 hours to be there for 3 to then 5 hours back.
It
It's just
sounds
all,
so stupid when you're telling it to someone.
but
But
those memories last a lifetime, and that's the beauty of
oh, yeah,
photography.
100%. I mean, even if I had got there and not taken a single photo I enjoyed, looking back on now, I mean, obviously, I feel like in the last year, my abilities as a photographer have improved exponentially. So if I went back there now, I'm sure I could take much better photos. But even so, just, the fact that it was the spot that I had envisioned for so long and then finally got to. As soon as I got back to Melbourne, I remember I went to, we have a local shop here called Office Works, and straight away I printed off in like the biggest size possible. I've got that photo printed off and it's been hanging in my room ever since. Just
That's
because,
incredible. You'll have to
yeah,
send me a little video of that at some point. That's amazing.
definitely.
So you've just got it like up on the wall. So that's one
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
One thing I haven't done before is have my work printed off.
Oh, you're missing out there. It's
Yeah,
so
right. Yeah.
definitely.
Um. So these things must feel like a million miles away at the moment now, with
Oh,
because Australia. A rumor I heard in these countries that you guys are definitely not opening your country this year. Is that right? Pretty much.
pretty much. It hasn't been said 100%
100%.
yet, but it's definitely looking that way. I mean, especially given how the situation in most of Europe and America and Asia still looks now. So it's unlikely that anything will change.
Do you predict that you'll be able to travel across Australia more? Is there parts of Australia you haven't even been to yet that you would like to go and shoot?
Oh, yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean,
Massive place, like
it's huge, and especially now. I mean, I'm obviously being from Australia. I follow mainly other Australian creators online, and I see a lot of places where I think that cannot possibly be in Australia. But then, you look at it and you think, wow, how is that? How is that real? I mean, where I'm from, it's obviously very much forest, and then I guess going into the city, urban, and then beaches down the bottom. But then I see pictures of deserts and pictures of like huge mountains, and I think that how is that the same country?
so funny you've said that, because in the opening shot within your chapter, you're on sand dunes, and like again, they can't be a million miles away from yourself.
No, that was only a 2-hour drive away, actually.
Wow, really? So you've got that, the city, and your rainforest or jungle, as whatever you want to call it, and that's all within sort of this 2
Within
hours
a day, yeah.
radius. So we have beaches and cliffs. So
But even that, I mean,
I think there's a lot of UK landscape that a lot of other people sort of try to
definitely.
come and
Oh, 100%. I see pictures from the UK all the time, and I think that I'd love to go there. I mean, especially London, and I mean, your own photos and Ben's photos and all those sort of photos. I think that's like cliffs and those sort of coastlines are something that we just don't really have, at least not in the part of Australia I'm from. So
it's funny because it's those kind of things that until this has been something quite sort of enlightening for myself whilst doing this project and bringing the creators together, is we don't really appreciate how special our landscape is necessarily until we compare it to your own, and then we want to come and be cultured by your stuff, and
yeah,
you guys want to come over and be cultured by our stuff.
yeah.
It's kind of like a both ways win-win for some people, but at the
It's funny
moment,
like that, 'cause, yeah, I remember I had taken photos in the Black Spur, which I'm not sure if you know what that is. It's a very famous part of the forest, just sort of an hour away from here, 40 minutes away from me,
I think
with some of the tallest trees in the world. They're mountain ash trees, up 80 plus years old, and they're absolutely massive. Like, and I
how
remember
cool.
how tall. I mean, I don't want to be completely wrong here, but I'd be
Oh, sorry, no,
saying,
I thought you said it. I thought you said the height.
oh, no, no, no. I'd be saying 80 to 100 meters tall in some instances.
Wow.
I mean, they're ancient trees, like
Yeah,
hundreds of years. But I remember speaking with someone from, I think, Japan on
Right.
Instagram as well. And they messaged me saying, have you ever been to the Black Spur? And I thought, yeah, but how have you heard of that? And they said, oh, that's like one of my absolute bucket list locations. And I think that's
Wow,
when it
and
hit.
there's you just like casually on it.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of
It's
thinking that's somewhere that I can just go to straight away. I could go there right now and
it's
see
so
that. And
it's so
other people have that as their spot. So
it's
my Yosemite for me is like the Black Spur for some other people.
someone
So it's
else, whereas
crazy.
someone in
Exactly.
America can easily, well, not, I mean, America's massive, but it's a lot easier for them than it is for myself or yourself.
Yeah.
But what you're saying about the black spur is something that happens quite a lot over here in the south, in the fact that I've always been brought up on the Jurassic Coast. You might have heard of that in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a World Heritage site, and we've always lived on it, and we just kind of appreciate it as a
Don't
beach.
really appreciate it, do you?
No.
Mm.
So that's very interesting hearing that side to you. If before like we end this call, and it's been amazing like chatting to you, but is there anything that you think, you know, even though it's not looking great as an outlook at the moment, and it could be another year in Australia, and although in comparison to other countries, you're in a bit of a better position.
Yeah.
Do you think photography is sort of that main sort of sole focus that's kind of kept you going? Maybe is that a nice way of putting it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's obviously being pursuing other photo opportunities has sort of pushed me to look at other areas within Australia and sort of appreciate the things that we have here that I haven't seen yet, which I might have looked over had I not been sort of a photographer, I guess, because originally, and like many other people here, our go-to thing is to sort of leave Australia and go somewhere overseas. But I think looking at things now and seeing other people's photos has really inspired me to sort of, I guess, look locally more. I say locally because obviously Australia is huge, like you said, but yeah, just sort of plan things within a national scope rather than an international one. And I think that when I finally am able to leave the country, at least I hope that I will have improved even more so again, because I guess the same thing that I said before, being limited to one area or one place just really pushes you to make the most of that. So then when you finally do branch out into other places again, you have that whole extra skill set. So that's the one thing I'm really looking forward to. Even if it takes another year, I think that gives me a whole other year to improve before I finally get to go overseas again. And then I'll be that much better for the next time. So
your self-motivation is admirable. Like to keep yourself going like you have been, and like you just said then, take the opportunity, teach yourself from it, and then when you're allowed back out again, you're gonna be up here. You're gonna be on a whole other level.
That's the plan, hopefully.
So it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. If you guys listening or watching from home want to check out more of Jonas's work, check out the book. You can scan a little QR code in there, or I'll put his Instagram on screen so you can go and follow him on Instagram. So it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you again.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Pleasure to have done this. It's been awesome.
Honestly, it's incredible to have you on the project.